Welcome back, everyone. We have reached the end of day 5. You've made it, hopefully not worse for the wear. Thank you for participating in our mass collaboration exercise today, the Crown Act Challenge, a exercise that is the result of deep investment by 2 of our participants from last year. I've encouraged some of you to think about creating exercises on your own, but it's entirely possible that a project that you work on could turn into an exercise at one of our sites. I'm excited to jump in. It was fun watching the movement, people starting different rooms, and all of a sudden everyone was eating fufu. Everybody was having fufu after a while, like, you know. So I'm really excited to hear about the small group experiences. We'll have time for that. We will definitely have time to find out where the larger group landed, but I would also love to squeeze in some time for individual reflections as well. Not just about this exercise, but we've reached the end of our formal programming. Next week, we will do your speed dating exercise, and folks can decide to join or form teams in various capacities, or may choose to delve into methods focus for the week, or an individual project that emerged from here, or one that existed before this. There's so much opportunity next week, and I can't even believe I'm saying this, but like twice the fun. Like, there's so many more speakers, and if you thought this week was interesting and exciting, wait to see the speakers next week. All right, so let's jump into our Crown Act Challenge. Simple exercise, simple. You know, hey, there's this survey. You know, it's already done. Yeah, you don't have to do anything. Just figure out a plan to, you know, deploy that next week. And then once you figure that out, let's throw you all in a room together. Folks have been saying for a while now, it would be great if we were all together. I wonder if you all still feel that way. It's like, hey, let's all be together. Yay, family. Different value approaches with regards to research, different perspectives, you know, disciplines. Is IRB important? You know, so there's not a right or wrong approach or answer to this. We're working with a common task framework here, which you haven't figured it out yet. Just means we're using this exercise to interrogate this method on the way to making our decision. So we throw everybody in a space, and you're working on the common task. So we wanted to get you all thinking, interrogating the things put in front of you with the tools you've learned this week, and of course, those tools that you already had, right? And I don't know if you feel this way, but it's often when I find myself in a space where I'm learning new tools, if things get a little confused, I reach towards the tools I've always used. So it'd be interesting for you to think about what you reached for in these moments, okay? The task seemed quite simple: to collect a specific type of stories from a specific type of people. But as we've all discovered, opportunity, incredible opportunity, sometimes has to be tempered by ethics and morals and related to rules or laws that will be built long after our projects are over. So I encourage you to take a look at a presentation from last year. Naomi Sugi, we did an author talkback because she installed what is the equivalent of a surveillance device on the phones of formerly incarcerated individuals, and tracked them. And at the time, you know, that was fine. I mean, or was it? You know, so sometimes there are loopholes and things that we can do, that we're allowed to do, that you know, just maybe the rules haven't caught up with us yet. So we encounter those situations, and we have to decide what we want to do. I'm interested to see what each team thought they were going to do when they walked in the room with the larger group, whenever you arrived in Fufu. You know, what you thought you were going to do versus where you ended up. Ultimately, every small group at every SICSS site who does this exercise may have a different outcome. And when all the groups get together, one group may pave the way towards their thoughts on the matter, or we may find ourselves in the middle of a death by amendment, where suddenly everyone's thoughts are in there and you don't really get anywhere. Or important elements of you know, of our ethics or morals, or you know, important things are left out, or people, right? If we seek to work across the divide between disciplines and data science and social science, these are conversations will happen again and again and again. Do we move fast and break things, or should we talk about IRB? Our emerging method lives in a gray zone, and we have the chance to make sure that those that may never be in the room are considered, because we all know what it's like to look in the room from the outside, right? And I think it feels worse when you're looking in the room from the inside and you're not included, or when you're sitting in a seat and you realize it's not a real seat at the table, right? So I want to ask you, ask yourself, if you showed up for the people today in your decisions and in group and in our teams and outcomes that look like you, that may not have a voice in that space, did you make sure that you showed up for those folks and represented them well? So think about that, because you know the system is not set up to consider us. The system will continue to replicate itself, and that replication usually doesn't involve us. But with this toolkit we can, as Calvin says yesterday morning, take the door off the hinges, mess some stuff up. You know, and if you enter this room, let's make sure you have something to say. So I'm excited to see what you all have to say. So maybe you don't want to deploy it. In your heart of hearts, you're like, nope. Maybe you want to deploy it with caveats. Or maybe you were like, we should have deployed this an hour ago. Why are we still talking about this? Like, why is this so complicated? So I encourage you, alongside thinking about the group work here, to think about how you enter the space and what you prioritize and why. Because the system has a habit of making us think that progress is happening and we're doing the same old thing. So let's get to our group presentations. I think that's a good place to start. I think it's only right that we go in order of that they showed up on the sheet. So we're going to start with Joliffe Rice. And I invite anyone to please help me to pronounce things properly. There was an argument last year about who owned Joliffe Rice. Folks, I was like, Ghana, and people were like, it's ours. So I'm here for that too. So you have a few questions that you're meant to answer in your group presentation, your small group presentation. And at the end, I'd like to hear from who you all have decided will present on behalf of the group to tell us what you've decided to do. So the questions you're looking at are: what sorts of ethical issues did your team discuss and consider in designing your distributed data collection campaign? What are the challenges inherent in sampling a specific subpopulation? How did your team go about addressing this? How would this assignment differ if the goal had been to sample stories from the general population rather than the specific subpopulation of those who would be supported by the passage of the Crown Act? Describe your experience moving from your small group discussion to the large group discussion. What did you learn working with scholars, potentially from outside of your discipline? You have a plan in place to start collecting stories on, do you have a plan in place to collect stories on Monday? And if so, what are you planning to do to make sure you are continuously scaling up your efforts over the course of the week to get maximum exposure while also ensuring quality? And I would also add ethics and equity. How is this an example of the Common Task Framework, and how might this approach be useful in our work as CSS scholars? And then, you know, we'd love to know what you thought of the exercise. You know, get some good nuggets. Your name gets added to the bottom with acknowledgements and thanks. So let's start off with Team Joliffe Rice. Go ahead and raise your hand so we can spotlight you. Okay, great. Start getting people on screen. You have about 2 minutes, but like I said, we've got a little extra time tonight. So we want to make sure you have a chance to share. But about 2 minutes for each of our small teams, and then the big team presentation at the end, about 3 minutes. So take it away.
Erica, do you want to start it off?
You can start.
So I actually don't think we talked about ethics as much as we should have when we were in our small group, and we really appreciate that when we joined Fufu, and we also joined another group separately before we joined the larger group, ethics became a really big part of our discussion. So we appreciate that. I think we mostly started off with discussion about the methodology and concern about data quality. And you'll notice that once we start talking about the larger group discussion, our methodology pretty much stayed the same, though we improved on some of the terminology, and we actually shifted in the types of questions that we wanted to ask because of the input from other groups. So Erica, I'll let you jump in here.
So I still very confused because I thought that at the end of this exercise, at the end of the conversation that we were having in the Fufu, we were going to end up with just one. Like we were not. Are we deploying a different survey than the other groups? So I still very confused about that because And my understanding, we are just going to do one big survey based on what we discussed with the all.
So to answer your question, we're asking where you were when you entered the large group. So what had you planned to do? So yes, if the group does decide to do to just deploy one, that is fine. Nothing prescribed. You can decide to do something else, but we want to get a sense of who you were before you walked into that room. What your group had decided.
Well, we decided to basically use the different social media, mainly because we noticed that we had a very short period of time. So we were supposed to deploy on Monday and then get all the results on Thursday. So we were like, okay, how would be an easy, fast way to get those data? So we decided to use Facebook and Twitter, basically focus on groups that would be our institution that work with the Black community, or using Twitter that would reflect the population. And then we basically create a small recruitment call, but we also noticed that we probably need to make it shorter or use some type of infographic, because for Twitter you just can use 140 characters. So, and I think that was pretty much it. Maybe, yeah.
Any other comments from any other members of the group? So ultimately your group decided to deploy before you walked into the room, yes? Okay, thank you. Okay, so then our next group is Red. Imani, Amber, and Christina.
Cool. So I'm just going to start us off and then definitely going to leave space for my group mates to talk. One of the things that was really apparent to us as we kind of looked at the survey and we're trying to parse out what the task was that we didn't feel super comfortable about putting something like this out there, in part because it was asking quite a lot of people in terms of like what the subject matter is and how intensely people might react to it, right? Like this is not easy to talk about. You're asking people about discrimination. And so we spent a lot of time in our group talking about like, what are the ethical considerations and how can we approach something like this in a way that doesn't feel like it's burdening Black people and particularly Black women.
I guess the only thing that I want to say is, first, I just really enjoyed working with this group, mainly because I wasn't quite sure after reading what we were doing if they would also have the same feelings that I had about the questions. So I really appreciate like both of them just being like, all right, let's just talk about how we even just feel about this whole thing and asking these questions. I would say before we started moving into other groups, we were also pretty confused because there were just a lot of details I think that we just weren't sure of, like the consent form, where was the data going to be used after this? Was everybody doing their own thing? And I think that's what we thought. Everybody was doing their own like survey. So that's where we were before, or at least that's where I was before we went to the other groups.
Amber, any comments to add?
No, I think my team really did really well summarizing everything. I think Imani really helped us all out a lot by stepping up and leading a lot inside of the larger group. So I think that was really helpful. And I think that it was really enriching to work with everyone who has such a different background. And for the last question, I don't really think that there are any questions that we might tackle more successfully by working alone. I think that we really need to be in conversation with each other. It gives us so much more clarity on things that we might be missing. And I think there's a lot of risk if we were to do this or something like this completely alone. So I don't really think there are questions that would have been more successful if we were alone. I think we really needed to hear each other's opinions and backgrounds to strengthen our projects.
Can I just say that Amber said I have nothing to say and then just dropped some serious knowledge. So that was a beautiful comment, Amber. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Snaps and kudos and such. Oh, she turned off her camera. Is she blushing? That was wonderful, Amber. Her camera just malfunctioned. Okay, thank you so much. Let's move on to our next group. So I don't know what to expect here, but Fufu had pulled everything. Fufu was like gravitational pull. So I'm excited to hear from Fufu. That is BJ, Asha, and Andrea.
So I will get started. So our group was, we kind of came at the survey wondering, we kept looking at the survey and wondering whether we could deploy the survey as is. I think that was one of the first things. And we were a little bit confused because we thought we needed to just deploy the survey as is. But as Asha will tell you when she talks a little bit more about it, she is I will call her a survey expert. And so we had the benefit of her saying, no, these questions should not be in this order, and that the attention check should be in the middle. And so we were dealing with the survey itself and figuring out that if we had to deploy it as is, we would have to take a different tack. But in the beginning, we were very concerned about deploying the survey in its current form. And so Asha, I will let you take over from there.
Thanks. We started with our very, very broad discussion around how we are going to deploy it. I mean, we first discussed, of course, about the Google Forms, and we looked at and we felt that form instructions were incomplete, questions were not in order. And then first thing was about those two questions which were for attention check. We just felt this is not the right survey. Maybe they forgot to replace the questions. So all of that we discussed, and then we moved on to talking about very wider things like, okay, now we have all these things, so how we are going to deploy. So we brainstormed in all sorts of ideas, like we will use social media and what kind of age group we want to. But before that, what we discussed is about this. Well, there's a question also in the discussion that you sent, specific subpopulation. So first we started with that defining our population that we want to reach out to, and we decided that it is a specific subpopulation. So we first we wrote our objective and our problem statement, and we started describing who do we want to reach out to. Now that helped us to streamline and narrow this whole process and say, now where are these people existing? What are those places there where we can reach out to by defining that subpopulation? And had it been wider and general population, it would have been much easier in terms of, okay, let's just deploy it anywhere. But it would have, I feel that it would have diluted the whole objective and the purpose of it. We have a very specific purpose for this survey. So general population might not have served the objective of the whole survey. So specific population, targeting subpopulation is important here, according to me. And then, yes, and after that, so in a small group, there was a lot of learning from Andrea and BJ, sharing their experiences and helping me also to understand what the whole context and the background of this Crown Act and all of that. We did, on websites and all we went, so we tried understanding the context of all of this. So once we have done all of this, when we move to the larger group, in larger group, yes, the ethical and the confidentiality and the emotional risk of asking all these questions, all of those things surfaced, and we shared about how important it is. And the best part about large group was that, certain things that I personally felt that I could not see through my lens. Everybody else brought their own perspective and made me think about it, more at deeper level. Like, would focus group would be better to go for this? But then I was like, resource constraint is there. No, survey would be quicker. But what is the depth of the information that we need? And even if you want survey and focus group, do we have the skills to conduct focus group and ask those questions? So all of those discussions around ethics and confidentiality, and then how are we going to make sure that we are not hurting anyone in this whole thing? Because we are asking people for certain very sensitive information. So we had nice little discussion around that. And then towards the end we decided larger group, and I think Amber is going to put the form in Google Forms, and hopefully by Monday we'll be ready. And some groups, each group brought its own strength, but I feel that when we were more into discussion, we did not put our document fully together, but there was other group who had nicely laid out all the questions, and the other group had nicely put the plan together. So I think putting all this together, we have reached somewhere in a good place.
BJ, do you want to add something? Are you sure? Because the last group, Amber didn't want to add anything and drop knowledge. So you sure?
No, I don't have it because I don't have experience on the survey or first-hand data. So I usually just deal with a lot of the secondary data. So I really learn a lot from my small group, like Andrea. She mentioned about like that maybe there's a generational difference about facing the discrimination by the natural hair. And Asha, because she's expert in the like clinical psychology, so I really appreciate her. She gives a very valuable feedback on how we can address the survey questions, which might trigger traumatic memory. Because I study people have suicidal behavior, so I understand that some of we needed to consider that. So for the larger group, I just amazed by how people can give us so many different perspectives. Yeah, basically, I just enjoy learning, but I probably did not talk that much, but I enjoy learning from each of you.
I got to just always follow up with a question to people who don't have anything to say. Again, nuggets. That was like a bar of gold there. That was fantastic. So Susanna dropped something in the chat box. She says, as a demographer, I appreciate Andrea's point about generational effect. Yes, 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 yes. All right, so then we're moving on to, and I'm hoping I pronounced this right, but if somebody knows how to pronounce it properly, I don't want to embarrass myself in front of the provost. So Tuozafi, so Team Tuozafi, Rebecca, Daniel, and Ramesa.
I don't want to go first because
Yeah, y'all just waiting each other out. It's just like, I'm not going to say anything. She going to say
This
something.
is a staring contest.
Well, I'm going to win. I'm not going first.
We understand each other by heart. So I will just say something then to start, and then you will like improve.
Oh, smart, smart, smart. So let me just get it out the way.
Okay. So our first discussion was about this is going to be some sort of an academic thing, or it's going to be much more like a social movement call, you know, much more motivating people. I think it was an important discussion because when I see the end of the campaign, it's a mix of it. Like you have this call for the people, it's some sort of motivating. My point, I think we did great things in the small group, but when we like get to this big group, I was like, I had this urge to, you know, like finish it, you know, like find the questions. I had always this urge, but I was trying to stop myself, you know, like be patient, learn from the people. And then I really love this ethical discussion, especially concerning the people's dramas and traumas. You know, like it was really like, yeah, it was really right. People have these things. Just the last thing that I want to say that about some sort of a suggestion. I don't know why I'm thinking this way, but I just have my country's context. This kind of rules and this kind of discrimination, I think that might be much more in high school because the rules are there much more strict. You know, like in colleges and universities, you have much more, you know, flexibility. I was thinking, why not for our project, but for the Crown Act, maybe doing these surveys in high school and with their families, these kids' families might be helpful because I was thinking maybe the rules are much more strict in there. Thank you for the whole group. You know, like they really contributed a lot. Yeah, I'm really thankful for them. Okay, you are next.
Okay, I'll go next, and then Daniel can fill in like whatever I did. So in a small group, I think we were a little confused about like the campaign, like what is a campaign? What is like we never really, you know, initiate a campaign as a social scientist or as an economist. So we never have to do a campaign. So we were doing a little bit Googling. So we were saying how, yesterday we had a $1.75 budget to do a survey, and today we have $0 budget to do a survey. So we need to find a way to recruit people to answer these questions, right? So then we have to find a way to motivate people so that they spend their free time to help us to finish the survey. So also we encounter some questions is that what are we gonna do with the survey? So we look at the survey, they have basically the meat is within 3 open questions. And we are not publishing a poetry out of it. We are not publishing a book out of it. So what are we gonna do? We can't show a diagram or a bar chart, right? So that was we are not sure. But later on when we joined a big group, there are other people come up with more specific questions on how you feel about Crown Act, right? So we also talk about ways that we can deploy our survey. I feel the same with Romasa. When I was assigned to this project, I was just thinking how do we finish this today so that it will be ready on Monday? Because I feel like time is very important. We don't want to spend too much time dealing with IRB, because if you think about IRB and trying to send something to IRB, this project will never see the light of the tunnel. So we weren't thinking about the ethical issues but in a big group, there are people bringing these issues, and I think they are very important, because it could be some of the people, if they share the experience, it could be very private, right? And then how are we doing with this data? Okay, so I will leave the floor to Daniel.
Yeah, I think they covered most of it. I think we were just thinking of, in terms of the question of how will we motivate participants to take the survey was important, or understanding what the data would be used for was important for that question. Because one way that I was thinking about it in the beginning was is this going to be used as an advocacy tool? Understanding that I think the Crown Act is still on its way to becoming federal law. So I didn't know if this was let's collect data on experiences with hair-related discrimination to sort of compel these people to do this. Or I think Rebecca was thinking it more along the lines of one way that we could motivate participants is to say we will share the report of what we find. So maybe it's more of an educational angle. So that was a big question that we struggled with. And then, yeah, I just want to second their points about the larger group discussion was, I also entered it pretty nervous. I think what you said about death by amendments is so funny in that, because that's what it felt like for a little bit. And then I was learning a lot, and I really appreciated Red's group, their conversation around ethics, because I just had not been thinking about that at all, and bringing our human participants back to the center and saying we're asking them to share very vulnerable stories, and to think about how those stories will be used, I think was very important. So I really appreciated the large discussion, and I also learned a lot. So thank you.
Thank you, Group Tuosafi. And we're going to finish with my favorite word, Kelewele. Kelewele. So that's Susanna, Nayantara, and Renee. Please raise your hand so we can get you on screen. There we go. Thank you.
So I mean, I can go first, and so I feel like I contributed the least. So let's do it in that order. But I did learn the most. So I kind of feel like I really liked how we started off. So Susanna had asked Renee to kind of talk about her experiences growing up with her natural hair, and we were talking about our joint immigrant experiences and how it's very different for all of us, as opposed to people who've actually grown up in the United States. And I think that by the time we joined, the main group. And Christina is the one who kind of pulled us into Fufu. So a huge shout out to Red for, I think, leading the entire group discussion, because Imani did she was, taking the polls, making sure we were all on the same page, and Amber was kind of editing the documents, and it was her questions in the end that we decided to go with. So I think that, that was a huge moment of learning for me personally, but I'll let Susanna and Renee talk more.
Yeah, excuse me laying in bed. I don't feel well. So I know, Nanette, you said come as you are. This is me, I'm coming as I am. So I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed working in the small group as well. And, we all were able to share our experiences with natural hair and so forth. And then also, not only that, we kind of divulge into colorism and our experiences with, we're all immigrants. So we talked about that, and I really appreciated that conversation. And then we realized okay, let's focus a little bit more on documenting what we should do for the exercise. So we're able to then move into execution on what we'll do in terms of collecting data. And we've, thought about a range of things. And we had to kind of bring things back down to realism, just because we didn't realize that, oh yeah, we have 4 days to do this and so forth. So when we went into the main discussion room with everyone else, I can agree with some of the other groups. Ethics was brought up, and I think I was thinking of it more as this is a great opportunity to hear, more about people's experiences and celebrate natural hair and things like that. And, it was really good hearing the other groups talk about ethics and so forth. So I think it was a really good exercise, and look forward to see how everything, goes out. And then shout out as well to Imani for taking the lead in the main group. Thank you.
I think that's our last group. So I want to add some thoughts before we spotlight whoever's giving the overall presentation for the giant mega group. Those folks, please raise your hands so we know who you are and can spotlight you. So I wanted to mention a couple things. Well, actually, I do that all the time. I'm like, a couple things, and it's like 10. So I want to mention a few things. Oh, did Susanna not speak? Susanna.
I was hoping that you did.
Bring your demographer's lens. No, Nyan thought it was like,
don't
forget. No, you get your own spotlight by yourself, please.
Oh gosh.
Share.
Well, yeah, as I will echo what Nayantara and Renee said. We really had a really good discussion with, we all talk about the experiences, and we talk about how anti-Blackness and colorism is in Latin America present. So, and then, we moved to the questions, and then, it was definitely hard moving to the bigger group because we all have so many different perspectives, but it was very enriching in the sense of the ethics discussion. I will second that it's important to have this into consideration. But I think I'm particularly proud as to how, even though we started with this non-stop discussion, we ended up actually in a pretty good place. I think we decided, even though it was a big group, we decided on the questions, we decided on several things. So I think we made a lot of progress, even though it was a short amount of time, and there were many of us from different disciplines, different perspectives. So I think, I don't know, I'm proud of the work we did as a group.
What a beautiful comment to end our small group discussions on. Thank you so much. And I appreciate, I think it was Nayantara who mentioned that you hadn't presented. She's like, oh, it's her. So you can thank her. So I want to add a few thoughts before we jump to the larger group presentation. And I'm waiting for those hands to go up. I don't know if you're writing each other right now going, oh, damn, somebody's supposed to present for the whole group. But get your hands up so we know who you are. I promise you I won't be spotlighting you immediately. I have a few things to say. Regardless of what your group decides to do, whether you feel you're ready to deploy the survey or not, there's a few things I want you to think about. So I think often in research spaces, all of us are running as fast as we can. So we're running towards tenure, we're running towards graduation in my case, slowly. We're running the next conference, and you can find yourself in a space where you're just trying to get stuff out. You're just trying to get it done. And a few of you mentioned that. You're like, we're running out of time, we just gotta get this done. And I think that conversations that center us, include us, have to go slower, because the system perpetuates itself. When we move fast, immigrants aren't present, women aren't present, LGBTQIA folks aren't present. It's so easy for us to be left behind. And I think the thing that I was hoping most from this for you all is that you would build bridges across disciplines, across experiences. And for me, so much of the research process is finding those connections. So my favorite question when I meet anybody is, where are you from? Because I'm trying to figure out if you're from New York or those bridges, when you find that. And I love that the last group talked about that you all realized you had that immigrant experience, or maybe it was a group before that. Yeah, I think it was the last group. But that doesn't happen when we're sprinting as fast as we can, when momentum is driving us. I feel like we get left behind with momentum quite a bit. The last thing I wanted to mention is you're often in this space going to find yourself with two polar opposite things in front of you. So you'll see this when you all apply for funding, which I hope I get to read applications from everyone. Would love that. I want to give you money. Take the money from me. You have the option in this space of doing traditional research. For those of us for whom IRB is our Bible, you IRB, you get permission. You also have the ability to build a tool. So you come across something like this, and it has the potential to be either, right? This could be a huge database that has stories in it that anybody can view and garner inspiration from, and maybe there's new stories. These databases are popping up all over the place. There's lists of Black women PhDs, which I came across that one recently. I'm like, yes, love that. There's like the History Project that has all these incredible stories of Black historical figures, or there's research, and those things are different, right? So I think one of the central questions that I would have started from at this point is, what is this? What is this? What is the ultimate goal for this? And the direction you go in from there is quite different dependent on that end result. And I don't know if anybody went back and looked at Nicole's presentation about her project, but that could have been something that you may have done to see where she wanted it to go. You could have gone back, the video we gave you just gave a big picture of the Crown Act. So the only real information we have, and I wrote to her, I'm like, if they write you, don't respond, don't respond if they write to you, so what's her goal here, right? So if we're getting behind this person who's doing something incredible, and trying to support her, she's our shero right here. So if we're supporting her, what are her goals? I was hoping to maybe hear that somebody might have wanted to pull her back in and ask her. If we're supporting her work here, what's the ultimate goal for her? And I will tell you on the other side of this where she is in the process, and she alluded to that a little bit. But the things that you're talking about are exactly what she's struggling with right now. So, do I get this out there faster so it helps people? Is this going to support advocacy work? Am I doing, text analysis on, these big chunks of do I collect videos? Can I collect audio? And the thing is with this toolkit, oh my God, y'all are gonna be able to do anything, like literally anything. But this exercise was meant to help you think about, but should you? When you hit that space and it's our stories and our experience, and I hear the folks out there mention that there's somebody in this space who studies suicide. There's a lot in those stories from me and Nicole. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of excitement, but there's a lot. And is that something that we want out there for forever? And what are we going to use it for, right? So whatever ultimately that you all came to decide, and there really is no right or wrong answer here. There's just so many different things that we could do here. There's like a million research projects. Like we could focus our whole site on the Crown Act. There's so much. Yeah, there's so much. So Imani asked the question, can you repeat the questions you want us to reflect on for the big group? I think it's a bit of those same big questions, but I mean, more so than that, I would say we want to know where you landed, why, and what the process was for the group to get there. So where you landed, why, and what the process was to get there. I think that's the most important piece. If you notice, I never came in the room. I was never in the room. You know, I sent my little spies. I was never in the room. So I want to, and we didn't tape that either. You notice that we didn't tape that. That was real talk. That was family talk. So we didn't tape that. So I want to hear from y'all what happened. So whoever that person is who's going to present, and I'm still not seeing any hands up. We'd like to hear how it went. And maybe it's a bunch of people. Oh, there we go. Imani. Okay.
Okay, so I'll talk about where we landed and then a little bit about how we got there, and then other people can chime in because I'm sure I'm going to leave some stuff out. So as some people have already discussed, we landed on not using the original. Well, first thing is we talked about our understanding of what we were supposed to do. So we all tried to get on the same page, and Merlin was in our room for quite a while, even before we summoned you, which I thought was really kind of funny. So he was there for a little bit, and he answered some of our questions so we could all get on the same page. I think from there, then Andrea was leading. There was a part where we were kind of talking about how we were going to deploy. And so she was getting information from different groups about what they thought. So where we landed was to ask participants about their opinion of the Crown Act, giving them some information about the Crown Act. We also asked, at the end, we asked like a celebratory question, and I'm missing something because I don't have it up. Yeah, I closed it out. So somebody else will have to fill in for the types of questions that we asked because I don't have it up on my computer anymore. But we did land on those types of questions, and we did talk about every question that we were gonna ask. The other thing that I remember that we landed on was for the consent portion of it. I think we all agreed that more information needed to be added there. So I know Asha had a comment about we need to make sure that they know how it's going to be used, and that it could be triggering or traumatic, depending on how they take the information. So we needed to add that there, and then also adding how the information, making sure it was explicitly clear how the information was going to be used. And then for deployment, we landed on that we definitely want to use Twitter to get people to fill out the survey. Okay, and then I'm sure someone else can take it from there about how we got there and what the discussions were like.
I'm just gonna wait for someone to raise their hand. Guys got me singing. Oh, Grace just volunteered Christina. Come on, Christina.
Okay, so I think one of the other questions that came up while we were in the big group was like, to what extent should we try and shift the focus of like the survey, right? And then within that, do we want to keep open-ended questions versus closed-ended questions? And again, bringing it back to the fact that the people that we anticipate completing this are going to be Black folks, probably a lot of Black women. And so what does it look like for us to ask even more out of this like group of people that like, yes, we want to know what their experiences are like, but also we do not want to like unevenly burden a group of people that is already unevenly burdened in this society. And so we landed on close-ended questions at the end, and we didn't want it to be ending on, I guess, we wanted to bring in like an ability for people to recognize like something happy. And so we talked about potentially adding in questions at the end that focused on a shift, a cultural shift. Like, have you noticed a shift culturally in terms of like how people embrace their natural hair? Do you feel like you've been able to embrace your natural hair more in the past 10 years or whatever it is as culture has shifted?
So I will just jump in only to ask Susanna, who's going to be mad at me, to just explain her idea about the fact that we should ask some different kind of questions to get some information about how to deploy the survey. And I didn't want to say it wrong, but I thought that that was a real critical point, because we thought that maybe if we asked some different questions, we could get some information and then we would be able to deploy a better survey. So I'm sorry, but
Okay.
it was good.
She voluntold you.
Yes. It was just in response of the ethical concerns that Red brought to the group, that then I proposed that perhaps we could use what Salgani described in the book that he did in New York City, where they deploy I think it's called a wiki survey, where you ask questions, but you also allow participants to add their own input. So the survey ends up being that one being instead of the researcher leading the questions or leading the ideas of what people want, then we can ask participants, okay, what do you want? So in this case, could be about whether these questions should be asked, how they should be asked, to whom should be asked, whether some incentive should be given, or what kind of, all these things, so that the participants tell us how we should do the research instead of us deciding how to do it.
Thank you, Susanna. That's a great site. I'm glad you all brought that up. So I have a particular question, and I'm asking this with a purpose. So in these sorts of situations, Black women, Black people have no choice but to step forward, because the focal point of this exercise was us. So there's in some ways a forced intimacy, a forced sharing. There is an extra burden that we carry when there are exercises like this, and I'm sure others feel that too when they're the other. And I would love to hear if anyone is willing to share their experience being within this exercise, but also being what's studied in the exercise. I struggle with that quite a bit, especially if I'm the only one in the room. I'm like, did they just say that? I have to say something, Is anyone willing to sort of share how they experienced this?
So did you want me to start?
I mean, you're on screen.
I know.
I love it.
So this is a very triggering experience for me. And I'm gonna try to not to be emotional about it. But because I really wasn't emotional when we were talking about it, because I was trying to kind of get us to conclusion. But I realized that when people were saying that it's hard to talk about or anything like that, we didn't ask Amani and me and Amber and Renee. Well, I think they talked to Renee in her smaller group, but didn't ask those questions of us. And I was I didn't want to just, I wanted to be a part of the group, but I was kind of struggling that I wanted to say, hey, you want to know about this? Here I am. I can tell you a lot about it. And I think that happens a lot. It happens a lot as a woman in all male groups where, they're asking questions and I'm going, hey, I know a little bit about that. And it's like, it's dismissed. So I'm glad you asked the question. It's very emotional for me to talk about it, but I think it's important that you asked the question. I thank you for that, because I think even my other sisters who are of a different race don't really know how bad this is in the practice of it. So I'll stop there.
I'm putting hearts up for you and deeply appreciate your intellectual and your emotional leadership in this space. You have a habit of saying things that cut through for all of us. It's a gift to have you in this space. I want to say that out loud. And I also think it's so important to mention that even in this incredibly diverse SICSS-Howard Mathematica space, if we are not vigilant, that it's very easy for folks to feel on the outside, or to feel that they have to force their way in. And again, those fast-paced spaces are where we're often lost, where ethics is lost. Thank you so much for sharing. And anybody want to share their experience being in this space? How people experience the exercise? I want to make sure we leave some time for personal, for folks to share anything. Imani, please come on screen for us.
Yeah, I just want to echo what was said before, and I really appreciate you like being open like that, because I think sometimes people just don't know how traumatic it is. And also, to be honest, when we first started in the big group and everybody was talking, I was like, okay. And Christina in our like chat, for our small group, we had a chat on Slack, and she was like, all right, so we got to say something now, like we got to speak up. So I really appreciate that push from her, because I was kind of like, okay, I didn't think anybody else agreed with what we were saying. And so I was kind of just like, well, I'll just, be on mute for the rest of this, because I don't even know, like, I don't want to have to push for that. And I'm also in a space right now, personally, where I'm not really interested in educating people a lot. I know that some people don't like it, but I'm no longer in that space. So I'm not really, that's not my interest right now. But I really appreciate you speaking up and talking about how it can really be emotional for us. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Imani. I want to echo that. I feel as a Black woman, I'm often pulled into a space where I turn into people's personal Google. Like, I can Google that for you. Like, you can look up restaurants and find super esoteric things in the middle of stuff, but you can't Google some stuff. Like, just, so I am here for that and deeply appreciate that. More voices. Does anyone else want to share about their experience in this exercise? Got thank yous in the chat box. I encourage you all to continue this conversation with each other, on Slack and offline. There's just there's some things that get broken open in spaces like this, and this is our real talk for our family here. So I want to shift gears a little bit. I hope that you all found something of value in that exercise. It's something that I personally created and put a lot of time and energy into. So I would deeply appreciate any feedback in any medium that you have about it. I hope, I hope it was of value. Christina has her hand up, got a comment.
I'm curious, were there things about what you presented on the survey that were intended to be like glaring or something like that, or was that not a part of the intention?
So we just duplicated the same survey from yesterday. So if y'all looked at the survey yesterday, it's the same exact survey on the front end. And Nicole had chosen those questions. Those are questions that we used when we interviewed each other. And I said I would actually unmask a little bit and tell you sort of where they are in the process. So it's been an incredibly difficult IRB process, is my understanding. When you try and do something like this with a global lens, it gets very complicated. When you think about adding in, bells and whistles like, wanting to get audio or video, that becomes complicated. If you want to just do this, for public intentions, to just put it out there, you run the risk of it being used in a way that you don't intend. So, there's examples in Matt's book about you know, what was it? The Ornithological Association that created the way to track birds, and then people used it to hunt the birds. You know, so, you know, there's they are in a space where they had, so there's this dissertation research from Nicole. There's this project that came out. Yesh told you that, you know, he brought a skill set to this, and she has a content expertise. So in that group, we have a computer scientist and we have a social scientist. And those, the move fast and break things, and then the IRB, and there's a lot, right? Nicole is also a qualitative researcher, so she did an ethnography. So this is not her space of expertise. So they are in the process of slowly finding their way through this, figuring out how to appropriately protect subjects, collect stories that will serve future research. But I think most of us are also academics. I can't speak for everybody, but also because, you know, we want to do some good in the world. So there's all these competing things, and you have to find a way to make sense of that. And in the middle of that is, you know, trying to collect data. So no, there weren't any gotcha things there. We tried to make it as simple as possible to just give you what was there yesterday, so you'd actually save time. I've heard you all spent quite a bit of time on the survey, and that there might be an experiment. I mean, there might be a brand new project that comes out of this. I mean, I would recommend you actually maybe call Nicole back. She will see this video, of course. You know, there might be a project here. You know, it's like, hey, Nicole, have you thought about an experiment? You know, wouldn't that be cool? And I know Yesh is very excited to do some sentiment analysis. That was one of the reasons why he wanted the large swaths of text, and why she wants the large sections of text. So those open-ended questions relate to that. So there's, you know, it's lots of competing priorities and ways of approaching this that that can make a Frankenstein monster if you're not careful, or, you know, what I say, death by amendment. Just because you can do everything doesn't mean you should. I'm happy if there's, I'm happy to answer more questions. I'm also happy to move us towards, sadly, a data assurance discussion for a few minutes. I know what you're all thinking, like, damn, Nanette, this was already pretty heavy. Why? Okay, hold on. Andrea's got a question. Andrea? Yep.
So it's not really a question. I just noticed that Revlon declared bankruptcy again recently. And Revlon was the company that produced the first relaxer for Black hair that was widely utilized for you know, a great majority in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And for them to be going out of business is actually kind of interesting in the context of, I mean, they made a lot of other things, but they had a really big African-American segment that used their products. And the fact that they're going out of business is interesting because of natural hair being something that people are turning to. So I just thought that was really
No, thank you for that piece of information. That's something I knew. When I think about Revlon, it's so interesting. You know, there's a few Black women I remember in the commercials, but that connection was something that was not clear to me. I immediately think of like Madam C.J. Walker and such. And going all the way back. For those that don't know that, she was the first female millionaire, I believe. There's a beautiful document. Well, it's not a documentary. There's a beautiful movie about her you can watch on Netflix. That's pretty incredible. All right, folks. I hate to sort of. Oh, I got another question. I saw a hand up for a second there.
No, I changed my mind.
Change your mind? You sure?
Okay, I'll say it. I just wanted to say, so today was a very hard day for me personally. Something very bad happened out there today, which I'm sure some of us are aware of. And for like pre-planned things like this, like these are the days that I sort of like question what I'm doing as an academic even. So I probably wasn't the most engaged at the start of the day, but I just wanted to say thank you for people being brave enough to share their stories, particularly Andrea and Renee and others, because it definitely brought like greater meaning to the exercise within the context of the fucked up stuff happening in our world. So yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody for being perhaps the active participant that I wasn't quite prepared to be at the top of today.
Thank you so much for that. And I want to reiterate that this is a space where you arrive as you are. And I deeply appreciate whatever you were able to bring to this space today. I found out about what you found out about probably about an hour ago. Just a very difficult and very different world that we're living in than I imagined. And I know we're all out here kind of doing the best that we can. And I'm deeply appreciative that that I'm in this space with you all. Last year when we were in this space, I believe we found out that an officer, and I don't remember the exact timing, but there was a police officer was convicted related to killing someone, a Black person, or I think it was about a year ago. And there's a lot of places we can be in moments like this. Yes, thank you. Ava said during the closing plenary, we found out that Derek Chauvin was found guilty of murdering George Floyd. I think about all the other places I could be in, with all the other people I could be with in this moment. And I think it's a blessing that there's so many women in the space and so many kind people, and I deeply appreciate all the vulnerability that especially my Black sisters and brothers are bringing to this space. Yeah. So I have to tell you all a little secret, and I'm going to leave it up to you as to whether we want to go forward with my secret. So data assurance is actually a DJ. We have a DJ in the waiting room. We did a dance party last year at this exact time. You know, I know we're all in different spaces, but he'll come on in and get the air horn going. He's going to play September by Earth, Wind and Fire. And we shook off some stuff last year. But I understand that there's a lot going on in the world, and this may not be the time or the place for that. So I want to leave that up to everyone in this space to do what's best for them and for their well-being and mental health. There's nothing on our schedule that's more important than y'all taking care of you. I bet you I can get the DJ to come back next week. I can get him to come back next week. Just doesn't seem like the moment right now. Yeah. I think what I should do is, oh, dude, you did not kill the vibe. Stop it. You were all fire and beautiful and awesome and fabulous hair. Yes, all the beautiful people that were vulnerable and shared in this space. Thank you so much for your bravery, for your insight, for your intellectual brilliance, and I'll invoke Paula Moreno and say your leadership. Thank you. Thank you so much. I am going to, I think what I'll do is, we're gonna pay the DJ, it's fine. He's a friend of mine from college, it's fine. I think I'm gonna go over the schedule so you know what is to come next week. And then I think if folks wanna head out and take some time, that's great. If folks wanna hang out, hear some music, that's great. Totally up to you, but we'll pull the schedule up for me, Merlin, and I'll just let y'all know what's coming next week. Yeah. We have an incredible panel on Monday morning. So we'll have a group of incredible academics and nonprofit leaders who will be talking about interrogating data collection practices on Black people around the world. So the indices are created that define our experience without often asking our experience. So these 4 people have spent some time thinking about that work, and we'll be talking about it from different perspectives. So that's in the morning. We will be joined in that session. You'll get a special link for that section. It'll be a WebEx, actually not a Zoom. You're allowed to actually invite anyone you want to attend that. You'll get a link from me. I think it's already up on Slack. You can invite your whole family if you want. Wide open. We want to make that as available as possible. So you'll get a special link for that. That's on Monday. Then scroll down. And scroll down for me, please. Thank you. Then we'll have our bite-sized lunchtime talk. Before that, I'll introduce our speed dating exercise, which is just basically having you each cycle around with a different group over different periods of time, talking about your research ideas. So, think about it over the weekend. What set your hair on fire this week, as one of my friends' mentors says, or what got you jazzed that you might want to work on. So we'll put you in spaces to talk about that and sort of see what synergies, I hate that word, what synergies emerge, what things pop up. So we'll do that in several rounds of 10 minutes each. So it would help if you actually came with some ideas in mind or skills that you want to use. So maybe you're not going to be the lead on the project, as Yesh said, but maybe your skill will meet someone else's content expertise. And we expect that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different ideas will probably be in your queue after this. Folks enjoyed this process. It's a bit chaotic, but also a lot of fun. Then we'll debrief. We have every intention that at the end of the first day you will join the research groups, but honestly, I think people finally shook it together by Tuesday or Wednesday. So that is not a fait accompli just because it's on the calendar. I think things are pretty flexible. It's our hope that you'll start to organize yourselves as you did today around different research ideas. And by the end of the week, you will have settled into one or two that, maybe you want to put in an funding application for one of them, but that you'll settle into that and you'll spend all the open space that we have during the week in between our lunchtime talks and our evening academic presentations that involve computational social science or data, things like that, that you'll be in these groups. And we will continue to have this platform and the space for that. My mantra will exist every morning if you want to show up for it. We'll also continue to have inspirational speakers all 1 minute daily next week as well. And our first speaker is Karen Levy from Cornell University. She's giving a presentation on her forthcoming book on surveillance of truckers, so robo-truckers. I will also add that if you have not checked your mail today, some of you might have received your swag bag. So there's a compact but a very dense package that should be on its way to you very soon. That includes books from some of the folks that are speaking, a gift card for you to get some food, a little bit of swag to end your first week on a high note, besides our DJ. That's kind of all I got on my end. I want to say that the floor is open for anybody who wants to share or make a suggestion as to how we spend our time. But my plan is to shut down the breakout rooms and bring the DJ in, and we'll see what happens from there. So I'm going to close all the rooms. He doesn't know that he's coming. He's trying to be all stealthy. Like we had him sneak in like an hour ago. So we have a question about your group project. If you all decide you want to go ahead and deploy the survey, then we can talk about that on Monday. You also can decide you don't want to. It's a family decision. So I wait with bated breath to hear what y'all decide to do. Please take the weekend off. Okay. Thank you all for watching. For more information on SICSS-Howard Mathematica, visit our website, follow us on social media, and join our email list.